Project F by Jeanne DuPrau, the first chapter Friday read aloud video with the word nerd. Today as you listen, play along. Watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down word by word and then follow the instructions given to you by your teacher. Hey teachers, check the link in the description box for some student engagement worksheets. I've got both generic and novel specific ones, and I think they'll help your students zone in instead of zoning out when you turn on the screen. One last thing before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Martindale's 6th grade ELA classes at Pioneer Elementary School. I'm so glad you guys are here today. Thanks for listening. I hope you love the story.
Hi, my name's Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel. Or let's stop that. Hi, my name's Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week, I'm going to be reading to you from Project F by Jeanne DuPrau, and if you recognize her name, it's because she wrote the wildly popular City of Ember series that was also turned into a movie, and this is her first new book in a while. Honestly, it was the cover that drew me into the story. Those bright letters, the nature, the door in there. And I just, once I saw the cover, I knew that I had to read this book. I'm going to do something a little bit different than I usually do today, and that is I'll read you the blurb like always. It's very short, but then I'm going to read you the author's note. And this is usually a note from the author. It's not in every book, but it's often in a book. And it comes at the very end after you've read the whole story. And as I was reading it, it made me even more interested in the topic of the book. And I feel like it's going to do just as good a job as sucking you into the book as reading the first chapter. So I'm going to read you that. I'll still read you a little bit of the first chapter. But I think the combination of the blurb, the author's note, and the first few pages is really going to pull you into this dystopian story. So it says, "Welcome to the future. There are no cars, planes, televisions, or smartphones. Climate change wreaked havoc on Earth hundreds of years ago, and now people live a simpler life." Then 13-year-old Keith uncovers a secret. It's a mysterious mission known only as Project F. It's exciting, it's revolutionary, and it's going to change the world. It's exactly the kind of adventure Keith has always longed to be a part of. And what is adventure without a little danger, right? But how much danger is Keith willing to risk? For himself? For his family? For his community? For the entire world? These are big questions that the main character has to grapple with, and they are questions that the author grappled with. And this is what Jeanne DuPrau has to say about this book. More than 30 years ago, before many people were talking about solar power, I built a tiny solar-powered house. All its electricity came from two big panels standing in a field next to it. My computer, my lights, my fan, my hairdryer were all powered by the sun. I found this thrilling. Maybe soon, I thought, the world would be provided energy from the sun. It turned out to be more complicated than that. Solar power has some fierce competition. For the last 150 years or so, human societies have been using the most powerful fuels we've ever discovered: coal, oil, and gas, the fossil fuels. We burn them to make electricity, we run cars on them, we rely on them for our factories. Without them, we wouldn't have skyscrapers, cars, jet planes, rocket ships, computers, or the internet. Without them, we wouldn't have the modern world. There's a problem with fossil fuels, though. Burning them sends a gas called carbon dioxide, CO2, into the atmosphere. The more of that gas there is, the warmer the world gets, and the climate begins to act in strange ways. Terrifying wildfires blaze more than often. Heavy rainstorms cause floods. Heat waves push temperatures up and up so high in some places that people can't work or even go outside. Polar ice melts and the seas rise. But because we want what our modern world offers, we keep using fossil fuels. We keep using them despite the rising heat and the fires and the storms and the floods. We keep using them, though the long term results could be an Earth that's uninhabitable for many life forms, including the human race. Our plan is to switch eventually to renewable energy. That is, energy that does no harm, that we'll never run out of, like energy from the sun, the wind, and the power of river currents. But these sources have their problems too. As we know, the sun doesn't shine at night or on cloudy days, and the wind isn't always blowing. We have batteries that can store electricity so we can use it when we need it, but we don't yet have batteries that can reliably store hours or days worth of electricity for large buildings or for cities or for whole countries. That means renewables will not be our sole source of energy anytime soon. Our plan, if it works at all, will work slowly. Meanwhile, the global temperature rises in a steep curve. So we face hard questions. Will we stop using fossil fuels? Will we use them less? Will we figure it out before it's too late and have to power the world completely on renewable energy? If we do, what might that world look like? For a long time, ever since I built that little one-room solar house, I thought about these questions. I don't know the answers. I wrote Project F to imagine one way things might turn out. Here, I'm going to skip to the end because I don't want to give you any spoilers. What's important? What things could we do without? What might our world look like if we had to start from scratch? I think it's good to ask yourself big questions like these. Sooner or later, they could lead to some big answers. I love that Jeannie wrote this book with those questions in mind, because you guys sitting there listening right now, you guys are going to be the ones to come up with answers. It is going to be your generation that works to solve these problems. And I hope that books like this can put some of those questions in your mind and start being, like spark your curiosity, like get you thinking. Because we need you. We need you and your big ideas. Part 1 is called A Rescue Journey, and Chapter 1 is called The Terrible Accident. Again, we are reading Project F by Jeanne DuPrau. All was going well in our country at the time this story begins, which is several hundred years in the future from the time that you are reading it. There were no wars, few wildfires and floods, no famines. Almost everyone lived in one of the 7 cities. They were small cities, and all of them were within 2 or at most a 3-day train ride of each other. They were built as circles with a center from which streets radiate out like spokes on a wheel. If you could have seen them from above at night, glowing softly with their thousands of lights, brightest in the middle, fading toward the edge, you would have thought they looked like 7 golden chrysanthemums scattered over the vast, dark land. Centuries of work had gone into building these cities. It wasn't easy. At any point, there could have been a wrong turn that ruined everything. There still could be. Such a point was approaching, in fact, and its outcome depended, though he didn't know this yet, on a black-haired boy named Keith Arlo, who was at his home in Cliff River City at the moment his parents received a letter. Margaret Arlo, Keith's mother, opened the letter and read, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Arlo, we are very sorry to inform you." Her face went pale and she read on without speaking. She handed the letter to Keith's father, whose name was Arthur. He took the letter, scanned it, and said, "Oh no." "What is it?" Keith asked. His father handed him the letter and he read it quickly. "Unfortunately," it said, "being unfamiliar with ocean tides and currents, did not notice a sudden large wave. Husband went in to rescue, but both were swept away." "Swept away?" Keith said. "Does that mean they've drowned?" "It would seem so," his father said. "Alice and Dennis both." Keith's mother leaned against a wall, held her hands at the side of her face, and stared at the air. Alice was her sister. Dennis was Alice's husband. Keith read on. "As nearest relatives, you'll be responsible for the child left on the beach, currently in the care of Sandwater Children's Home." "I can't understand this," said Keith's mother. "The child," Keith said, "that would be Lulu." "Let's go and sit down." Keith's father turned away. "This is a shock. We need to think." They sat talking until late into the night. At first, Keith's mother cried, and his father put an arm around her and tried to comfort her. "I knew it was a mistake for them to move," she said between sobs. "Why did they do it? If they hadn't, they'd be alive right now." "They wanted something new," Keith's father said. "Warm weather, different scenes. They were young and adventurous, and a bit foolish." "I begged them not to go," Keith's mother said. "I knew something bad would happen." "Bad things can happen anywhere," said his father. "You just wanted your sister to keep on living next door." "That's true. I did." After a while, when Keith's mother was a bit calmer, they talked about Lulu, who was 6 years old. "She must come and live with us," his mother said. "Yes," said his father. "We'll have to get her back right away, somehow." Ordinarily, Keith's parents would have made the trip, but his father couldn't leave his business. He was a prominent battery maker in the city, and his shop, full of the wires and metals and fluids that could be put together to produce electricity in small amounts, enough to run a lamp or a fan, was always busy. And his mother, A designer of arches and columns and doorways for the Department of Buildings had missed a step on a stone staircase the day before and broken her ankle. She could hardly walk. Keith said right away, "I'll go." His mother said, "Keith, 1,000 misfortunes can happen in a 2-day trip, especially to someone like you." 4-day trip, Keith said, 2 days each way. "Curse this foot," said his mother. "I'd be on the train in a minute if I hadn't missed that step." His father simply said, "It's a big responsibility." Keith reminded them that he was smart. He was capable and strong and almost 14 years old, though his birthday was not for another 8 months. They talked for a long time. Keith's father kept pulling at his beard as he often did when he was anxious, but finally he said, "I suppose I could explain what you'd need to know." And from that point on, it was decided. Keith was going to get his cousin. It is on the train trip to go and get his cousin that Keith meets a man named Malcolm, and the whole adventure of Project F begins. If you want to find out what happens, you should definitely pick up a copy of this book. Maybe it's in your school library, maybe it's at your favorite indie bookstore. Mine's Birdie's Bookstore. I'll put the link for that below if you want to buy it from there. I hope that you enjoy this book and it inspires big questions in your brain. In addition to being a lover of words, I'm a lover of our planet. So anything we can do, any of those small changes we can make to make this world a more habitable place and like keep us living here longer, it's worth it. We should totally do it. So happy reading, happy planet saving, and I'll see you guys next time for another First Chapter Friday video.
To continue reading Project F by Jeanne DuPrau, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase one from your favorite local indie bookstore, or grab it via the link in the description box. Then be sure to check out the rest of the First Chapter Friday playlist. I have over 150 titles there waiting for you. I have all sorts of genres and formats, and it's just such a great place for you to start when you're looking for your next great read. Speaking of your next great read, if you want it to be a dystopian novel like this one, meaning it takes place in a future that's kind of messed up, I've got lots of other great ones on my channel. I'll be sure to put a link for that specific playlist in the video description box. This week's mystery quote says, "What you know is best can be easily swept aside by what you want." Thanks so much for visiting my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. I hope you come back again for more great First Chapter Friday videos, brain breaks, teaching tips, and more. I'll see you again next time. Happy reading.